The Enhancement Talent of the Week is brought to you by Star Will Books, your map to amazing stories. Star Will Books is the publisher of the best-selling science fiction series, The Adventures of Duke LaGrange. One of my favorites. I read a chapter every night before I go to bed. It's a sci-fi romp for the ages. Have you got around to reading it yet, Donnie?
I have. I'm not consider myself a sci-fi person too much, but this really captured my attention and kind of saw it in movie form in my head when reading it. So it's definitely can span a lot of different interests.
Excellent. And maybe Duke LaGrange will make a cameo in one of our dream cards at a later date when we can enter in some fictional characters. That's on the list. You can visit them today at starwillbooks.com. So Donnie, today's Enhancement Talent of the Week, another big one. This is, I think, one of the greatest enhancement talents that ever stepped foot in a squared circle. He was trained by Killer Kowalski and debuted back in 1986. In the early 90s, he actually toured Europe and teamed with Johnny Grunge, what would be Johnny Grunge. I think he was going by Johnny Rotten at the time, in a Suicide Blondes tag team. The Wrestling Eye actually called him Pro Wrestling's Diamond in the Rough. You don't hear that a lot about enhancement talents. I think that's a crying shame. He did go on to the WWF, where he wrestled and lost to the likes of Jake the Snake Roberts and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Tito Santana, Bret Hart, really the main part of the roster from the early 90s. And even had a couple really significant moments in wrestling history. He was the only wrestler to have ever faced Friar Ferguson on that infamous night in 1993 on Raw.
Wow, that is quite a distinction, I must say.
He also was the Santa Claus that got stunned by Stone Cold on a much later Raw.
Wow.
The only win this enhancement talent picked up in his WWF career was at a house show over a young Scott Taylor, the future Scotty 2 Hotty. So unfortunately, this guy left us way too early. In 2000, he suffered a brain aneurysm and passed away. After his death, his organs were actually used to save over 45 people and actually help 2 women retrieve their sight. So even in death, not only did he give us great matches before his death, after death, he helped the world become a little bit better place. He was ranked as high as 474 in the PWI. He reached that mark in 1994. And of course, I'm talking about the pride of Massachusetts, Mr. Chris Duffy.
Wow. Memorable character. I can see the vision of him standing in the ring, waiting for the star to come to the ring in my head.
Always had great ring attire, very neon, always bright.
Definitely stood out.
Exactly. And so in the show notes, I'm going to link my favorite match from Chris Duffy, which was his unfortunate loss to Saba Simba. The reason this match is so great is watch the big Samoan drop at the end for the finish. Chris Duffy, I don't know how he survived it. His arm was snapped basically into it. It looked disgusting, but it was a memorable moment. It's actually one of the few matches I remember seeing from Saba Simba as a young 10, 11-year-old. And I still remember it today, was that match against Chris Duffy. So I have to include that in the show note. If you like the Enhancement Talent of the Week, if you like the Wrestling Life Support Podcast, and hopefully you'll like the Dream Card series that we're about to embark on, how can you find us on social media, Donnie?
You can follow us at WLS Podcast, or you can search Wrestling Life Support.
And don't forget to subscribe to us with whatever podcast service that you utilize. Leave us a good review. If it's a bad review, I'm going to be really sad, and we might have to end the podcast there. So please, good reviews only.